Hello, everybody. So this is the first in a whole series of talks I'll be doing from now on, and it's really just to get the message out there. So I'll be doing these shorter format video presentations, and this first one's going to be an overview of the message. Kind of what is the message? What have I been doing these past 20 years? And what is the latest developments on this work, on this message? Okay, so this is what it is. Okay, the message is it's really a life journey. Okay, so let me just go for a brief biography of how I got here. Okay, so as a teenager, I was massively influenced by home computers, and that led me on a path to wanting to create artificial intelligence. And a bit earlier on in life, I was hugely influenced by Star Wars, and there was this movie called Moby Dick, based on the book 1953 version, which I saw in my teens. And movies like Excalibur really kind of put me in the mythic imagination. Okay, so this idea of home computers, myth, magic, I really lived in that world. And it really set me on a course in life. And that course was to create something epic. And that epic thing was to create artificial intelligence. Okay. Anyway, and so I went to university to try and create artificial intelligence, become a researcher, do a PhD, etc. But things took a really funny turn. I really dropped out of life, and I really ended up in this kind of really funny scene, living with beggars, prostitutes, drug addicts, musicians, all kinds of bohemian types. And in that context, in my early 20s, I stumbled on the land of the Lotus Eaters. So I really kind of, if I was influenced by mythology from an early age, then what happened, I believe in retrospect now, is that my life became a journey into the mythic archetypes, all the while trying to figure out how the brain works and create artificial intelligence. Anyway, so I stumbled on the psychedelic scene. Okay, and I was probably primed to wander into it anyway, because I was reading about brain receptors and stuff in the course of my neuroscience studies. So I was probably gravitating towards it anyway. And really through a series of chance encounters, really uncanny meetings, I really got into the heart of the land of the Lotus Eaters. And this sounds a funny thing to say, but there's very few people on this planet who have seen the world psychedelic scene from as many angles as I have. I mean, seriously, I was involved with this central character in the London scene, this guy called Fraser Clark, and he, kind of knew Timothy Leary, Terence McKenna, Ram Dass, all those people when they gave talks in his clubs. And I did his DJ bookings for a bit, and then I played in this psychedelic trance band called Cosmosis, which back then was one of the top acts back in the 90s, top 3 acts in the world. And then you have a funny relationship to the world psychedelic scene. It seems to almost like a cult contacts me out the blue. Well-known psychedelic writer Daniel Pinchbeck just contacted me out of the blue. He was kind of like the guy who probably single-handedly, like no other person, really kind of instigated the kind of current ayahuasca revival, kind of for the kind of the past decade. And all these kind of like series of like just chance encounters, people contacting me out of the blue, really put me in the heart of the psychedelic scene, which gave me the kind of like just the best position to really explore the whole kind of psychedelic counterculture. Anyway, it was like an initiation. Like many people, I passed through this scene, and I had this kind of like land of the Lotus Eaters kind of like mystical experiences, like many people back in the 60s and early 70s. It was like an initiation. Okay. So existing in this land of the Lotus Eaters, the kind of modern Eleusinian mysteries, I had these experiences of being one with God or one with the universe, like many people have experienced in in recent decades. And what the difference with me is that basically I really kind of pursued it. Okay, so what happened next was that okay, my friend, who was like a co-conspirator, collaborator in this world psychedelic scene, he died of a drug overdose, and it really made me leave the scene. Okay, but I knew that a major part of my life was to communicate what I experienced in that world of psychedelia. And so in the kind of like late 90s, early noughties, I started preparing to give talks. And about non-duality, about this idea that everyone is God, that somehow we're all one consciousness, and also the idea that the prophecies are now, or that the mythic archetype is real, that it unfolds in our lives and unfolds historically. Anyway, so what happened was the past 20 years of my life have been this kind of really trying to explain the mystery from all angles, giving talks for the past 20 years plus. And what happened is that there's been a total reform of all knowledge that's occurred in my mind, because giving the talks to all over the place, to many different kinds of people and the same people, I've really covered all kind of like areas of knowledge in relation to, this central mystery, essentially the revival of the perennial wisdom, or this kind of this religion at the heart of world religion, at the heart of the psychedelic scene. And I've basically kind of gone through just about the entire gamut of human knowledge. I've interpreted it in terms of this perennial wisdom, and I've kind of talked about it in these public talks I've been doing for the past 20 years. Okay, so what happened during the course of this journey that I have to talk about is that there's been a synchronicity trail. Okay, so the message is about the mystery, but then at the same time, the journey of communicating the mystery has kind of encouraged me through synchronicities to then go on pursuing the mystery and communicating the mystery. So it's really been a kind of like a kind of symbiosis between the mystery and me wanting to communicate the mystery. Okay, I'll go through some of these crazy synchronicities, because looking back now, I realized that all these synchronicities are totally interconnected. And they all involve Gnosticism, they all involve William Blake, and they all involve Abraxas, which is a kind of ancient conception of God, okay, that incorporates good and evil. Okay, now I'll go through some of these synchronicities just to give you a kind of the reason why I basically totally believe in the mystery, because the mystery showed itself to me. Okay, the first was when I first started doing the talks, I was full of self-doubt about what I was doing. Why was I devoting so much time to studying comparative religion, books on mysticism, books on science? What the hell was I doing? And the winter solstice of 1998, I was looking for a sign. Okay, cut long story short, I went for a long walk all around London, and then I exhausted at the end of the towards late evening. I sat down in Marylebone Library. Winter solstice 1998, there was a book open next door to me. The book was an encyclopedia of mysticism, and open on that page was a depiction of Abraxas with my name, W-A-I, written underneath it. Okay, that triggered a religious experience of non-duality. That's partly due to all the walking I did around London, also all the coffee I drank that day. Anyway, that gave me a kind of like encouragement that I was on the right track. Okay, I gave the talks for about 4 years. And then I started working at this really strange church called St. James's Church. I started not 2004. Okay, really special place, because it's a center of New Age, center of comparative religion, center of kind of really progressive, kind of interfaith, progressive religion, etc. The craziest of synchronicities, the night before, I gave a talk at this kind of a vegan raw food place called Green Angels. And the night before I started working at that church in April 2004, I gave a talk, and then I went home with a lady friend of mine, and then we went to the 7-Eleven in Camden. Okay, just on the way back to her place, and then craziest thing, I walked out the shop. There's this kind of homeless beggar, schizophrenic lady sitting on a pavement. I walked towards her, okay, and she says, "Do you want to buy my book?" I said, "Not particularly. I'm exhausted. I've got a new job tomorrow. I don't want to buy your book." She asked me again, "Do you want to buy my book?" I looked at the book. I was completely shocked. The book is called Way, My Name Written Twice. Okay, I told her that, and she gave me the book. Crazy stuff. I started work the next day. Anyway, about 4 years after that incident, when I was working in a church, I worked in a church for 10 years. Okay. So 4 years after that incident, I'm working in a church in my black robes, in my black verger's robes. I'm sat at the back of the church in this memorial service for this lady called Shusha Guppy. Okay, and so as I'm flicking through the order of service, just like you do after the ceremony started, I was shocked to learn that the lady being remembered was the ex-wife of the guy who wrote the Weiwei book. Crazy, crazy synchronicity. Okay, 10 years later, after starting work in a church, I finished work. I drive back home, handed in my keys for the last time. I drive back, I park at the traffic lights outside Camden Tube Station, and there's the bag lady again, walking straight in front of me. Okay, so that kind of, like life is scripted. It showed me that basically the universe is kind of like, life isn't random, basically. Life is like a story, and it's kind of written by a higher power. Okay, let's do 3 more synchronicities that are completely crazy, and then we'll link them all up. The third synchronicity involves this book called Demian, okay, written by Hermann Hesse. Now, a friend of mine told me to read it because he knew that I was very interested in Abraxas, and he came to the talks and he knew what I was about. And he said, you got to read this book called Demian, which I read in probably 2006. And yeah, I was stunned by what I read, because Demian seemed to describe exactly what my life was about, trying to communicate this ancient religion, okay, for the 21st century. Okay, that book was set in the early 20th century, but essentially what that book was about, I believe, was really, I believe that my life was a continuation of that story in that book. Okay, I even wrote it in the book I wrote called Quest, which is semi-biographical. And I felt that basically universe somehow conspired to make Hermann Hesse write Demian in order that I might read it someday. And that's a crazy belief, but that's why I really strongly felt it as a kind of like deep intuition. Anyway, the funny thing is, years later, okay, we're talking about 10 years after reading Demian, okay, I was getting to know my current wife. Okay, she lived in Zurich. She lived in this old part of Zurich called Niederdorf. I used to visit her. We used to go jogging up in the hills. And years after that, okay, I was doing research for a talk on psychedelics a couple of years ago on Zoom. And I learned basically exactly where we went jogging, okay, in the kind of what's called Zurichberg, the hills above Niederdorf, that Hermann Hesse had a house on the top of Zurichberg. Okay, so I didn't know this. She didn't know that, my wife. And so again, it's uncanny. Where we were jogging 100 years after he, was living there, would have been exactly the same paths that Hermann Hesse would have been walking around the time he wrote the book Demian. Okay, I took this as a sign, and also a strong sign. I later also learned that Hermann Hesse knew and was close friends with Carl Gustav Jung, who just lives a couple of miles down the road in Zurich. Okay, and they were close friends. And then Carl Gustav Jung believed in his Red Book. Okay, he believed that basically his work was about resurrecting the religion of Abraxas, which is what Demian is all about. Okay, which is essentially Abraxas is really old. I mean, we're talking probably ancient Judaism, right back to ancient Egypt kind of thing. So it really is like essentially the symbol of the ancient religion, essentially one of the main symbols. Okay. Okay, so that is a major synchronicity from a couple of years back that I discovered in retrospect. Now after coronavirus, another major synchronicity towards the kind of end of the first lockdown. Sorry, the end of the really major second lockdown. Okay, what happened was that basically I was living in London, and I had really noisy neighbors upstairs. They really were. They moved in really bad. I mean, really, I mean, like unreasonably noisy. Anyway, I told my landlord, and he said basically he had 2 properties, and basically one of those properties was seemed really great because it was near the West End. Anyway, in my talks, I was using a William Blake quote. It was the fields from Islington to Marylebone, Primrose Hill to St. John's Wood, were builded over with pillars of gold, and there Jerusalem's pillars stood. So I used that to end the public talks from around 2000 and kind of 2014 onwards, really. For several years, I used that as a lot of the talks. That's how I ended the talks. Anyway, when I moved into this place nearer central London that the landlord offered me because the situation with the noise, and it was lockdown. The second coronavirus lockdown in 2021 wasn't being resolved. Anyway, this place was really great because it was near the West End, it was near Chinatown, it was near, you know, all the kind of like nice places to visit, all the museums and stuff. Anyway, when I moved in there, I was completely shocked to learn that basically, if you draw a triangle, the fields from Islington to Marylebone, Primrose Hill to St. John's Wood, it's a triangle basically, a thin triangle, and most of that triangle is basically taken up by Regent's Park, and there's very little residential because the kind of thinner edge is taken up by Euston Station and King's Cross, St Pancras. Anyway, the house, which was on Albany Street of all places, it was actually Colosseum Terrace, but it's actually on this long street called Albany Street, which is related to the word Albion, which is the word that William Blake used for essentially Abraxas. He depicted Albion as Abraxas. Anyway, it was right on the middle of this tiny little sliver of residential housing, which is, there isn't much housing in that kind of like thin triangle. Anyway, I took that as a really kind of like strange, kind of like, again, synchronicity. Okay. The last of these synchronicities, which is unfolding, which I've just discovered in the past kind of year or so, okay, is it's really strange. It's to do with Brian Eno, the producer. Okay, this is going to sound funny. People are going to say this guy's projecting patterns which don't really exist. He's just kind of like seeing these synchronous patterns which are just in his head. Okay, I'm going to show why that's not the case further down in this presentation. Okay, Brian Eno is this kind of legendary producer. He was in Roxy Music. Okay, I knew him because as a teenager, I was a crazy Talking Heads fan. I was absolutely insanely so into their music. You know, had all the albums. You know, learned all their songs and stuff on the guitar, and you know, kind of like just adored the David Byrne, all that kind of stuff. Anything to do with Talking Heads, I was really into it. Anyway, they did their best work with Brian Eno. Okay, the synchronicity is this. Okay, I discovered that basically Brian Eno, I always knew that he studied in Ipswich Art School, but then I learned just this past year or so that it wasn't Ipswich Art School, which is actually further away. Ipswich is where I grew up. Okay, he actually studied in Suffolk Civic College. Now, the significance of that is basically the house where I grew up is literally one of the houses where I grew up. And we had until I left for university and some years after that. The house where I grew up is essentially a stone's throw from Suffolk Civic College. Okay, so where he studied in the 60s and basically where he would have hung out is exactly the street where I lived. I know now that sounds like it's just a coincidence, but the fact that later on Brian Eno would be becoming extremely involved in Extinction Rebellion. And then I read an article last year in the Economist magazine. Okay, Economist magazine of, you know, take anything to say geopolitics wise with respect to China, Russia, Iran with a pinch of salt. But they do good reporting on business and science and technology. Anyway, they ran an article by Brian Eno in the end of year special. Okay. And the article was essentially about how to start a world revolution. You know, his take on it, basically. I know that sounds like a contradiction. It's kind of like a mouthpiece of neoliberalism, inviting an artist to write an article on a world social movement. But it's everyone. This is on a lot of people's minds that something has to change. Even people in the establishment think this as well. Anyway. We think that basically this is not coincidence. This is basically like really deep and meaningful, and I'll explain why. Okay, one of my favorite albums of all time is an album that Brian Eno did with David Byrne called "My Life in a Bush of Ghosts," and in this album, basically, it is the first track is "America is waiting for a message of one kind or another." And it kind of goes into kind of religious themes because it goes into the Quran. It goes into kind of like essentially Muslim kind of like themes, religion essentially. And I think it's America is waiting for the message of what gave rise to America in the first place, which is esoteric religion, which is perennial wisdom, which is Corpus Mescum, the New Atlantis, and all that kind of stuff. So really ties in with the whole Islam, Wada al Wujud, kind of like Sufism, mysticism theme. Okay. So this connects up with what's happening in my life now, working with Core Live, because Core Live is this American media company, and they're so American, they're so connected to the kind of whole, American media corporate establishment kind of thing. So I kind of see the synchronicity trail kind of unfolding, now. And you get a kind of like window in the inner workings of my mind that this guy basically thinks that, the universe is communicating him to him through synchronicities. And I think that's exactly what's happening. So I think it's inevitable that, Brian Eno and I will meet, and I'll basically ask him, look, Brian, where did you hang out when you were studying in the 60s? You must have, walked along St. Helens Street where I grew up, because that's two newsagents where I used to visit as a little kid back in the early 70s. You would have gone to those newsagents. Anyway, that will happen in the future. But I see that, yeah, America is waiting for a message, and it's waiting exactly for this perennial wisdom. The message is exactly, I think, the kind of things I'm talking about. Okay. Now, okay, the message is, okay, the reform of all knowledge. And the reason why I believe that the synchronicity trail is really kind of objective, like fact, is not, my projecting meaning where there is no meaning. We think that synchronicities are real. They are a higher power that has scripted life in such a way that basically it kind of shows that the dice are loaded in life, that basically the hand of providence guides the evolution of history, guides the evolution of the universe to a set conclusion. And that if you open yourself to the mystery, and if you allow yourself to be an agency for the mystery, then the mystery will kind of give you signs and embrace you and kind of guide you along. And I think that's what's happened. So what I think's happened is that basically I've been on this journey to communicate the mystery, and I study a lot, I read a lot, I think a lot. That's what I do obsessively. Okay, what I think has happened is that the universe has put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in front of me to find. And what has happened over the past 20, 30 years is that, okay, this is what I think has happened, is that the answers to some of the biggest remaining mysteries in theology, political philosophy, ethical, moral philosophy, in science, to do with mind, brain, intelligence, to do with the nature of the universe, the world of technology, the biggest technological prize of them all, true artificial intelligence, and also some really big puzzles in mathematics, linguistics, and also computer science. I think basically the universe has basically given me the answers to some of these biggest puzzles. And I think these answers are not just like clever, I think they're right. And it's not me come up with this work. It's almost as if I've been the agent. All I've done, okay, I read a lot, I think a lot, and basically I'm quite a workaholic, is that I've been like a vessel to basically assemble the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. But the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle have been laid out in front of me to collect and put together. So okay, I'll cover these in depth in talks to come, but this is what I've been talking about for the past 20 years. So I'll go over what are the 5 major contributions to human understanding that are really hard, that academics and thinkers, people working in corporate labs, can pose the questions, but they really have no idea how to answer these really, really hard questions. I'll tell you what they are. Okay, they are in theology. It's really the nature of God. In Christian theology, it's the mystery of the Holy Trinity, that the Father, the Son, this Jesus character, and the Holy Spirit that's in all of us is somehow one and the same. It's really the mystery of how is a person simultaneously God. It's really the mystery of Wada al Wujud in Islam. It's the puzzle of non-duality. How can we scientifically explain it? Okay. That's one one of the things which I've been talking a lot about in the past 20 years, which I really has come to a point now where the answer, I can really present it in a totally convincing and compelling way, I believe, in a way that's also shows that this mystery of God is also the mystery of consciousness. Okay. The second major area of knowledge that is really hard is to do with the utopian vision. That's really hard to formulate. What is the utopian vision? And the reason why it's been so hard to kind of solve what is the perfect society, how do you organize society in the right way, is because there's a moral ethical puzzle which has not been solved. It's really Nietzsche's problem that we've gotten rid of God, and that you've kind of eliminated the kind of foundations of your moral and your ethics. And in his own words, Nietzsche said that these foundations are not self-evident. So you've taken away religion, God is dead. And now what? And now what he predicted presciently, he predicted nihilism. He projected final man, basically a life without meaning, without higher purpose, which is where we are today. Okay, so in a nutshell, we believe that the ethical moral problem, the whole idea of how do you kind of like formulate a rational basis for the Judeo-Christian tradition, and it's also in the Jewish Kabbalah mysticism, it talks about a time when there will be a rational basis for morality. And also Islam talks about a time when there will be a new Sharia that's based on rationality, free from superstition. We think that basically this rational basis morality exactly it depends on a rational explanation of non-duality, that all morality, ideas of equality, ideas of forgiveness, tolerance, treating others as you'd like to be treated, and to love your neighbor as yourself, and this is on this hangs all the law and the prophets. Really, the kind of cosmological, metaphysical basis for that is exactly non-duality, the idea that somehow we are all God. Douglas Murray, the thinker, and many other kind of new atheists, militant atheists, they are now in a conundrum, because they now understand that the modern worldview doesn't really do the sanctity of human life. It doesn't really do human dignity, and that there's no scientific way of replacing these notions of true equality, kind of human dignity, using a scientific or scientistic kind of basis. So we think that the resurrection of this perennial wisdom, that this non-dual idea, is really the essential foundation for this rational basis for morality. Okay, that's a really hard problem in kind of political and moral philosophy. The other really hard problem is how do you bring about world peace, or in the words of Yuval Noah Harari, a global mass identity. And again, this is a really hard question, which people can pose the question, but no one has any idea how to answer it. The answer is not a new identity. The idea is to basically reinterpret existing identities given the perennial wisdom. And once you do that, you show that Islam, all the world religions are essentially the same thing. And even like in China, you got an atheistic kind of ideology called Marxism, with a kind of Confucian Taoist Buddhist tradition. But even there, you can basically trace the ideas of Marx back to Hegel, back to Hermeticism, back to Corpus Hermeticum, back to esoteric religion. So there really is this common ground that really is the kind of like the basis for a common mass global identity. That's not a new identity. That's essentially a reinterpreting of existing identities to show that they're essentially the same root, the same essential core values. Okay, and the other really hard question in political philosophy is how do you do system change and how do you do revolution? I've talked about this quite a lot in previous talks, and again, is this kind of like the involvement of this apocalyptic, mythic, prophetic, esoteric dimension, which is absolutely essential for this thing to work. Okay. So okay, moving on, the third major area of human knowledge, which basically is really hard for people to figure out, is basically the nature of the human brain, intelligence in general, and life. So, okay, many of you know me from the fractal brain theory. So what that's become now is this kind of more unified life intelligence theory. Okay, now the work here has really progressed, okay, in the past year. And really, it's an idea whose time has come. Obviously, life intelligence has always been an interesting question, but it has become such a critical question now because it really is the last puzzle. People really are homing in and trying to answer, what is life, what is intelligence, and this life intelligence theory really, I think, will be, conclusive and definitive. I think it's really kind of like powerful, really. it is as if it's almost as if mainstream science and academia is almost there. So you already have mainstream institutions like Imperial College, where I went for a bit. They talk about genes as doing disjunctive normal form logic, which is exactly what neurons are doing, which I have showed in recent talks. So it's almost as if this idea of a symmetry between neurons and genes, life intelligence, genomes and brains, ontogenesis, and thought and behavior, evolution, learning, etc. It's almost on the cusp. It's almost as if the world academic scene is almost on a cusp of discovering it. But what I've done is basically just join up all the dots. So I've basically laid it all out, and basically that's what I'm in the process of communicating. In science in general, there's an implication to the life intelligence theory, and this idea that this theory extrapolates to the universe. So one of the other big remaining questions in science is, what is the overall nature of the universe? And the answer is that it is a giant brain. It is a giant organism. And the amazing thing is that there's always been ideas of universe being a giant thought, being a giant kind of like cognitive process. But recently, in the past few years, even people like the late great Stephen Hawking, now according to his book by his collaborator, kind of released his ideas posthumously. He said to his collaborator, basically he was wrong about the universe. That basically in the last years of his life, he believed that really it was evolution, emergent processes, and kind of like organic processes, and life, which was fundamental, and that the laws of the universe were secondary to that. Okay. And also Sabine Hossenfelder, who is like a real kind of skeptic in science, a real arch critic of, she cheerfully admits that she debunks what she calls nonsense physics headlines. But then she comes up with her own physics headline, and the physics headline in a prominent magazine, it is "The Universe Thinks." And then she says, "Hear me out," as if to say, "Look, I'm the queen of debunkers." And this sounds like a nonsense physics headline, but hear me out. And she says, "Yeah, this has been rigorously studied and rigorously kind of substantiated. The idea that universe, is a thinking, cognitive thing, like a giant brain, like a giant thought." Okay. Anyway, what's missing is a theory of exactly what is intelligence and what is life. So I think the life intelligence symmetry theory, what the fractal brain theory has become, is really its time has come. And also the idea that this theory extrapolates to the universe is almost as if this is where cosmology is heading towards now. Okay. The fourth major contribution to world knowledge, which is natural consequence or kind of like implication of the life intelligence theory, is the creation of true artificial intelligence. So ChatGPT is creating loads of excitement, but even Sam Altman, who's the CEO, of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, he says that really this is the limit of this approach, this way of doing artificial intelligence, that new ideas are needed. And the smart money of where the new ideas should come from is biology, of course, how the real neurons work, how the real brains work, which is exactly what the fractal brain theory, life intelligence symmetry theory is providing, this kind of interpretation of all neuroscience to give a unification of neuroscience, kind of life science, and also artificial intelligence. This is what we are spending a lot of time on. So it's basically C++, C, Java. It is a Visual Studio, what's called IntelliJ. It's for programming, and Android Studio. So this is where a lot of my time is going. So we're basically converting the ideas on the brain and life into software, basically. So this is me playing kind of Magus for the 21st century. Technologists like Renaissance technologists in modern times. Okay, so okay, the fifth major contribution. This is the work from the past year or so. So I'm updating you where a lot of time has been going, and it's related to computer programming because it's to do with mathematics and formalizing the theory in order to convert it into computer code. Okay, let me explain the latest developments, and it's really exciting. There's a major unification that's happened in the work in my mind in the past year. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, look, three kinds of languages run the world. Okay, there are three different kinds of language, and they really run the world today. They are okay. They're obviously human language, like French, German, Chinese, Russian, etc. That's one kind of language. Okay, the kind of stuff that Noam Chomsky studies: linguistics, language. Okay, the second kind of language is mathematical language. Okay, you know, kind of like equations, formal axiomatic systems. This is mathematical language. Okay, the third kind of language is computer programming languages. Okay, now, okay, in all three areas of study of languages, okay, there are two questions. Okay, what is the most minimal human language? What's the most minimal distillation of human language, which is Chomsky's minimalist program universal grammar. And there's also the question of what's the kind of like the generator of all human language. Okay, and then in mathematics, what is the most minimal kind of mathematical language you can possibly have? And what Gregory Chaitin asks, what is there a generator, a dynamic formal axiomatic system that can generate all other formal axiomatic systems, which is to say all mathematics reduces to formal axiomatic systems? Is there a most minimal generator that can also generate essentially all mathematics? Okay. There is also the question in computer science of what's called algorithmic compressibility. There is what is the most minimal computer programming language, and what is the generator that can actually generate all these algorithmic compressions that are, you know, kind of like in this most minimal programming language. Now the really big idea is this. Okay, there is a single unification of all three languages. Okay, but the really big idea is that basically the life intelligence symmetry theory. Okay, neurons as genes, gene regulatory networks as neuronal networks, genomes as brains, ontogenesis as thought and behavior, learning, creativity as evolution. That entire theory distills down to a mathematical formalism, a kind of recursively self-modifying monad, a single entity, which is also the same as the distilling of all these three kinds of languages: human language, mathematical language, and computer programming languages. And it's a single distillation, and its monad, this unifying language, is essentially in its properties exactly the same as what was called a universal and perfect language that was a major pursuit from medieval times through the Renaissance, early Enlightenment, and way beyond that, way before that as well. Okay, so that is the latest development, is a kind of distilling of these kind of like formal languages and human language into this kind of like this prize, which historically was it is the question of the monad, and this, what is the nature of this universal perfect language? And the question of the monad goes way back to pre-Socratic, pre-Pythagoras, Anaximander, way back to ancient Egypt, probably back to Sumeria. And so we think basically the distilling of the life intelligence theory, the ultimate distillation, is the same as the monad, the historical monad. Okay, so that's the really big idea. And with this language, we can basically interpret all the rest of the worldview, all the ideas of humanity, and all the rest of it, not just the life intelligence symmetry theory, but all political philosophy, theology, the entire gamut. And basically, that is essentially what Raymond Lull, the Catalan philosopher, and really like a kind of seminal figure in the early Renaissance, before the Florentine Renaissance. He really kind of like got the ball rolling, and really, I think what I'm doing is really like almost like a bookend, like a conclusion of the kind of process he set in motion of, you know, what is this perfect universal language. Okay, so that's what I think, and that's what I think the work has progressed towards. Okay. So the synchronicity trail has led to these discoveries, to this kind of like unification of knowledge. Okay, without the synchronicities, I would never have kind of pursued this life path. I would not have basically done these things, and vice versa. When these ideas are accepted and when they become mainstream, they will become proof of the synchronicity trail. They become proof of the objective status of the reality of synchronicity. That's not just projection. There really is a kind of higher power that kind of influences our lives. Essentially, I believe this work, this message, these ideas will essentially not just explain the mystery, the fact that basically they came about through the mystery, through synchronicities, will also be proof of the mystery, not just explanation of the mystery, but proof of the mystery. Okay. So, I mean, so that's what I think. That's what I think the work has become. And the bigger picture, what's unfolding on this planet, this really is the apocalypse. This, in terms of chaos, calamity, what's about to come is really quite serious stuff. Like, the environmental ecological crisis get worse. We seem to be heading towards nuclear war. We're heading towards all these kind of calamities and catastrophes. At the same time, we have a really rosy picture because we think that basically things are going to be fine, because this is almost like the kind of birth pains of a new age, that things do have to get a little bit more kind of like a bit more kind of uneasy for things to get better. But I think what's unfolding is basically, there is an apocalypse in the literal meaning of the word, the unveiling of the hidden thing. And the unveiling of the hidden thing really is this. What is that hidden thing if not the hidden truth behind world religion? If there's this kind of esoteric dimension to all world religion, this hidden aspects, and if this idea of the apocalypse is the unveiling of the hidden thing, of course, that unveiling is the unveiling of the secret behind world religion. And it's through science. It's basically this scientific revelation, and also the kind of like filling in of the last questions in theology, political philosophy, science and technology, mind, brain, nature of the universe, etc. And also this critical question of what is the nature of the universal perfect language and the monad. This really is apocalypse in the true sense of the word, genuine, bona fide, real deal apocalypse. And I think this really is the kind of trigger for a kind of world social movement. So back to Brian Eno, who, speculating how to do this world social movement, and Extinction Rebellion and all these kind of groups like grasping, trying to find out how to do the system change, how to do this great transition. It's not just kind of left-wingers or Marxists or environmentalists. It's also establishment people, people working in The Economist, for Christ's sake, neoliberal bastion of neoliberalism and capitalism, and also people in the establishment. They know something is wrong. They know something has to change. So this is a really, I think this perennial wisdom, this kind of revelation, this apocalypse really is a critical factor for really bringing about this great unfolding. And as things unfold, as things get more and more calamitous, I think, I basically do my thing and just get the message out there and see what happens, basically. Now, we always have to, see things from a kind of like a perspective of humility. That it's a joint work. That basically, I'm like a runner in a baton race. That you always have to basically see yourself as passing the baton on to the next runner. Basically, it's not basically we should cross the finish line or nothing. It's part of a joint effort. Okay. If a person believes that they can finally cross the finish line, obviously they should go for it and run for it. But what we will do, we will create true artificial intelligence and use that as a platform for communicating the life intelligence theory, and in turn use that as a platform to communicate the political and religious ideas. So that's always been the game plan, and we just see how far we go. Okay, and so what's going to happen next is that basically we are going to just roll out the message in this kind of format. It'll get slicker, it'll get better. We'll basically get more resources to get stuff out there, and the core live videos are impending, so we're going to do that fairly soon. Okay, we're basically just kind of sharpening up the scripts now, and then there's lots of other projects going on. So we're basically, in the months and years to come, we're just going to be rolling out the message now at a faster pace. So I think there's been a gestation period. I think basically things that have ripened. I think basically the entire message has become one coherent organic unity, and now is the time to really just roll it out there. Okay, so stay tuned. There's loads more information, loads more presentations to come, and we shall endeavor to just really pump it out there. Okay, so we're just going to be making loads more videos, loads more output, And do give me your feedback, and do basically keep in touch and stay tuned. Okay, so loads more information to come, an entire worldview to communicate, and loads more ideas, new ideas, and the latest developments to talk about. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm gonna end it there.